Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today holds a distinguished place in the world of Indian art. As a distinguished painter himself, as a teacher, a professor, and someone who has played a critical role in the dissemination and appreciation of contemporary Indian art. He's the director of the National Gallery of Modern Art, celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Rajeev Lochan. How comfortable are you with the prefix professor? You know, not something you apply to many artists and painters.
To tell you the truth, I love that prefix for a simple reason that it brings to light the 2 decades that I've put into achieving that, and that I still would like to maintain my academic interests, which I have been involved with all these years, and which have actually contributed, or which are in the process of contributing to National Gallery of Modern Art, because I actually see National Gallery of Modern Art as a virtual extension of this academic, intervention that I've had, and I see it as a culmination of those ideas in the form that they would appear to be.
So that's 50 years of the National Gallery, and you're sort of 7 months or a little more than that late in the celebrations which have only recently unfolded. Why the delay? There's been sort of concern and questions about that.
To tell you the truth, the National Gallery was born on March 29th. That was the transition period as far as the governments were concerned, and we were advised to celebrate it at a time. And therefore I thought that, whenever we start celebrating it,
it'll be time for celebration.
It'll be time to celebrate, and we can do that for a whole year, and that's how I envisage
it. Change of government inevitably has involved, particularly in the sort of more intellectual spheres and organizations, a purging in a sense of ideology. What's happened to the National Gallery of Modern Art?
Well, to tell you the truth, we've been very lucky in the sense that I've seen the transition in its totality, and both the governments have allowed me, and present government is equally allowing me to do and envisage the future of an NGMA the way art demands it to be. And I think that's a great, what should I say? I should be thankful to both the governments for having done so.
So is there sort of an ideological framework for art, and what might that be? I mean, what would be a right-wing view of the kind of art that the National Gallery has, or a middle-of-the-road view, or a left-wing view?
National Gallery of Modern Art has one single aim: the best and the most important, both in terms of ideologically path-breaking works, historically relevant in the context, cultural context, the social context, are the ones that are meant to be, because we are the repository of the cultural ethos of the country. Irrespective of ideologies, if they find a place within the framework of the creative endeavor, the creative enterprise that we are supposed to look after, and that's what we are trying to do, I think, National Gallery of Modern Art stands up and supports that. And I've been very lucky that people associated with me have also shared the same view and given me the kind of support that I wanted.
The minute there is an institution such as the National Gallery which is funded with public money, and there is always sort of controversy, because there is the inherent possibility of patronage. Controversy is why a particular painter figures and why someone else doesn't in a painting figures, and why some other painting doesn't, and what have you.
Well, it's bound to happen, but then again, if you have a larger vision of life, and where anything and everything that is important and relevant can be accommodated, not for the sake of being accommodated, but selectively, made part of the mainstream.
But this is the question of egos. My painting doesn't get there, and yours does, and vice versa, and so it goes on. So how do you negotiate that? Sort of you're a free bird, you're a free agent, sort of an artist, and how do you go around sort of coping with this kind of stuff?
Well, that's a very, very tricky question to answer. Nevertheless, I think it's being able to perceive people's mind and also time, which is more very, very relevant and important, that one is able to find ways and means of rising above. And I think all this...
So you do come under these kinds of pressures?
Well, you know, these are bound to happen because artists are egocentric people, including myself. And I think it is this ego that drives them to do and create the way they do. And many of them are able to contain that within themselves, and others would like to extend that to other peripheries.
Well, you know, I have a very sort of gross sensibility, and I go into the National Gallery of Modern Art, and you know, I don't sort of quite appreciate and respond to much of what I see. What is sort of the basis? What is a yardstick that you use to decide that this is a good, great painting or a work of art, because you don't have just paintings, you have other things too, that needs to be in the National Gallery of Modern Art?
Incidentally, I have people who help me do so. We have it on our committees, important artists, well, who have, as we say, arrived, seen the world, and have responded to.
You know, I'm sort of looking to you as an academic, and you know, and say if I was a student in your class, and like I said, a gross sensibility, what would you say to me in terms of, well, you know, this is what becomes art, because at a mundane level, you know, everything is art and artistic in some ways. I'm asking sort of you to define in some ways what would be, you know, a piece of art. You know, what yardsticks, what terms of reference and ordinary, everyday, mundane human beings such as me might use to respond to a piece of art. What should I be looking for?
Art is not about replication of reality. Art is about seeing reality, getting it to its essence, and finding via medias and options of creating a new world, creating a new image which appeals and is relatable to something that exists in a different world and in its own areas of and domain, and only that becomes art. Other only remains as representation, and I think that's how I'd like to define art to be. It is that creative you know, element that actually defines an appropriate usage of the language, whichever language you use, that when it juxtaposes itself and synthesizes itself in the appropriate fashion, that creates a work of art which is truly worth its salt.
You're watching a conversation with Rajeev Lochan, Director of the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Hello, and welcome back to my continuing conversation with Rajeev Lochan, Director of the National Gallery of Modern Art. You know, the National Gallery of Modern Art started with a very small collection, I think of about 200-odd paintings, and it's today grown to more than 16,000. So what becomes the aspiration, the role of the National Gallery? A repository of the best of modern art, and then what? You know, occasionally you put them up on the walls and people come and look at them, and that's it?
You know, I have a very ambitious plan. We are truly the repository of the cultural ethos of the country in terms of creative endeavors. The collection has indeed grown from 200 to almost 17,000 today. We are building a very large extension to the museum.
In Bangalore, is it?
In Delhi.
Okay.
Just behind, which is 27,000 square meters of new space. So virtually transforming the entire museum into a much more museum-friendly, you know, institution, which would have facilities and provisions for more interactive programs, exclusive programs for children, documentation center, a research center, proper restoration labs, an academic block, a preview theater where I want to have a whole library of films. So in other words, I don't want this to remain a gallery, so to say, which it is, only because of lack of space right now.
What about this initiative in Bangalore, where you're taking a sort of, you know, some of the the collection down south. How is that progressing? That too seemed to be for a while mired in controversy and delays.
You see, we have a functional branch in Bangalore, in Bombay, sorry, and we are building one in Bangalore. The whole idea is that the presence of National Gallery of Modern Art, and with this prestigious collection, along with the major exhibitions that we curate either from our collection or the ones that come from other parts of the world as part of the cultural exchange program, should be able to travel, to be able to be showcased in other areas from where people find it difficult to come all the way to Delhi. And I think it is with this intention that these regional centers, these are regional branches of the National Gallery of Modern Art, one at the CJ Hall in Bombay. So whenever we curate a major retrospective exhibition or an international exhibition, say Picasso, Delhi hosted it and thereafter it traveled to Bombay. We want to add many more centers like that apart from Bangalore, say.
In what ways is the National Gallery responding to the changes in the very notions of art? You know, you go to the National Gallery of Modern Art in, say, New York or Paris, and you know, you'll even see a can of Coke or Pepsi as a work of art on display. So obviously, you know, pushing the boundaries of what is art. And are we still much too traditional and, you know, stuck with painting and sculpture and things like that?
I think we are opening up. We have opened up quite. A museum needs a solid collection in its repository to be able to showcase that, because most of the time you cannot live on borrowed works.
So what are your efforts to get sort of into the newer forms of art and to incorporate them into your collection?
Actually, we have already committed to ceramics as a new medium, to installations and new media art. In fact, my own work is a kind of new media intervention. And what I believe in is that the infrastructure and the facilities along with the collection needs to be geared up in its proper perspective. So this is a state-of-the-art building with new experimental spaces for the kind of works that need to be shown. And we are already targeting people like Anish Kapoor with major exhibitions to be held in India in 2006. We're also we're also negotiating with the Mexicans to bring in Tamayo. So here's going to be a big mix of both the so-called conventional forms of art as well as the more experimental ones that we are, and the whole infrastructure and facilities along with provisions for all such major events to happen are soon going to be in place.
So again, sort of my gross sensibility, help me understand modern art, what a Swiss knife or the kind of things that I've seen in the National Galleries of Modern Art elsewhere, how do they happen to be there? I've often asked myself that question. Familiar objects from everyday life, of course, sort of, tend to get a different kind of life when seen on display. But I wondered what yardstick, what processes have been gone through in the curator's mind to choose these everyday objects and display them as works of art.
Yeah, I think it's the context that they are either, conceived in terms of, and that they are portrayed, that actually transforms the identity of the thing, and in the relationship of which it is projected with conceptual concerns. So I think it is this conceptual intervention of a kind that transforms the very nature of objects, the way they are and the way they are being presented. And these are, newer experimentation that has happened in the West and is slowly creeping into India. Some of our very young and talented artists are doing exceedingly well and showing, their works elsewhere in the world. And I think it's very important that soon National Gallery of Modern Art would also, we've already actually started acquiring many of these.
So you moved beyond the sort of, you don't have to be this great veteran and this great artist in the classical sense to get into the National Gallery. You can be someone young, dynamic, innovative, and not yet necessarily arrived to find a place there.
Wherever we see the process of arrival, and path breaking experimental.
What is it to arrive? What is this process of arrival? What do you look for? That a lot of people begin to say this guy's wonderful? Or do you go out and use your personal instinct and that of your committee?
Both. In fact, both. It's like saying that, you observe the creative processes of a particular artist, the way he has evolved, the way he is evolving, and, the kind of interjections that are getting associated with his work, and the kind of dimensions that they are taking, and then you put your finger onto, well, that's the period, that's the work that we are interested in, and try and, bring that into the main.
Despite the risks of being wrong, and somebody turning to you and saying that, look, you've been wasting public money.
Well, that's always happened.
How important and what role does public money play in the National Gallery? And is that a constraint in terms of your ability to acquire paintings and works of art?
Well, it may be a very personal observation, but I have never felt the crunch as far as financial aspects are concerned.
And how do you acquire works of art for your collection? Do you pay for them, or is it just an honor to be in the National Gallery, and so an artist will give it to you?
Both roles are open. We scout, look out, advertise, and for a whole year keep tracking artists and their exhibitions, and cull out the ones that we consider worthy of being part of the.
And then do you pay market rates?
We don't, certainly do pay reasonable rates, which and artists are ready to oblige, because I think they understand that these works are going into one of the most prestigious collections of the country. But it also does not stop us from letting people bequeath their collections, or wherever we see that there is a possibility of this nature, we have opened our doors to that, and in the next couple of years you would see a lot of work in this direction. In fact, Hussain Saab was here, and I shared with him that this delight of having a new museum by the year 2006.
So has he given you some paintings to auction?
He has agreed to do a new work for us, and the options are open whether someone would acquire it and bequeath it to the National Gallery of Modern Art, or he shall donate it. So National Gallery of Modern Art's doors are open to collaborations. We collaborate with major galleries, major museums. We are open to collaborate. We even collaborate with hotels as hospitality partners whenever we have our international exhibitions or retrospectives. Because I think it's about celebrating art in whichever fashion we do, by unifying our efforts from all the directions, rather than remaining an isolated institution which has little relationship with people that it belongs to.
You're watching a conversation with Rajeev Lochan, Director of the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with Rajeev Lochan, Director of the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi, and a distinguished painter himself. We've been talking about painting in the rest of the world. What about you? You started off studying in Baroda, and photography was a very early and enduring influence in your work. Photorealism has been sort of a hallmark, trademark of your work. What is the relationship between that kind of reality that you capture on a photograph and then embellish, and something that comes from the inner recesses of your imagination and someone just creates a canvas? That seems sort of in some ways a more romantic notion of art rather than something grounded in the reality of a photograph. What drew you to this realism?
I'd like to share that to me it is a more contemplative nature, rather than. You see, the moment has always interested me, because the moment is pregnant with surprises. It's the perceptive background in which we live and react to a particular situation that is so instantaneous that there is no way to actually either sketch it or record it. So my work has those psychological, interventions of the
So in
kind.
a sense, there is a relationship. The starting point is the moment of the camera shutter. And frequently it's an accident to get the moment, isn't it?
Well, I would say it the other way around. That normally you start with a blank canvas and arrive at your image. In my case, I start from a concrete reality and push that concrete reality to arrive at my moment. The only and the most interesting and fascinating appropriate tool over the years that I could find was the camera that I go around with all the time, or most of the time. I'm still carrying my camera bag without the camera. It's like saying that you observe that moment over given different times of the day, different states of mind, and then a particular moment arrives. When you say, that's it.
So how long does it take you to grab the camera and click?
No, I mean you're there. You're planning. You're contemplating all the time. I mean, I'm not interested in that flickering moment alone. I'm more interested in the ambience of the image, because these photographs are like my notes, which need to again brew to transport them to that realm of personal phantasm that is lurking or surging in my own inner mind. That is why I use the word more contemplative. I would utilize that physicality of the photographic image to recreate that image and push it to a reality on the canvas, until I realized that does it matter where you buy your chicken from, or what matters is what is it that you do to it. There was certain kind of an inner revelation, and said, okay, that's the end of the canvas. There it goes. Why can't I do, why shouldn't I do what I want to do overcome these barriers of material and arrive? And therefore, this intervention of trying to work on the photographic surface using all kinds of things, from sprays to acids to scratching to scribbling, and
Crayon to
transporting
paint,
crayon,
yes.
the layering, the undercoats, this thing, and even juxtapose images, or else try and see how the duality of the image coexists. So these are newer,
In some ways that, you've been doing this for a very long time, and it sort of has anticipated a lot of modern, contemporary, electronic art, where an image is now sort of, you're combining sort of, you're applying the classical on the modern, in a sense.
Yeah.
And I think that now you have sort of, the modern is being manipulated purely electronically, and not using traditional devices. Are you sort of moving into those areas of experimentation, or do you still feel that one foot in the classical is crucial?
Well, to tell you the truth, I've just recently bought my digital camera. After a great deal of rethinking, because I think it's important to keep. But nevertheless, I still feel more comfortable. Why? Because the kind of clarity of purpose and material that I still can get through conventional means is still not close as far as the digital is concerned.
Director of the National Gallery of Modern Art, how do you get time to sort of pursue your own work as a painter? And what do you feel is your primary identity? You're a painter, teacher, a babu?
Well,
did you cringe when I called you a babu?
No, in fact, I always say I don't want to become one. And I always also say I will not become one. You said it rightly. In fact, most of my work does involve a great deal of that, whatever you call it.
But you will not use that phrase.
Somehow. But then, yes, I've always been interested in diverse kind of things. I think my interests are still, educational and academic, and that's how I see the museum to be. That's why I use the word. I envisage this to be a kind of a research center involved in researching trends and and contemporary art, or modern Indian art, still needs to be worked at and written about. My own work certainly has taken a back seat for a while, but then these are inner compulsions that push you to drive you to create and do what you actually long to. And I have found out ways and means of doing that. I invariably take 4 or 5 days off whenever I can to go into art workshops, and you'd be surprised. October, I was there. I shot 28 films, and I'm ready with a whole sequence of about 60 works. I often get up at 5 in the morning and paint until 9 and get to office by 10 o'clock.
And become a babu. I'm sorry to push that. And so what epitaph is the former director 16 years later of the National Gallery
Well,
of Modern Art?
let me share with you frankly that I don't look at the years so much as the kind of work that I've undertaken for myself. And I'm happy to share with you that some of the most path-breaking decisions have not only been taken, have been executed during my
What would you want people to say about you at the end of it?
Yes, I want to, at the end of it, go back realizing that yes, National Gallery of Modern Art is truly an international institution, worthy and comparable to any other international museum of modern art.
And what would you have people say about Rajeev Lochan, the artist?
I think I'll try and continue my creative activity alongside. Once the basic infrastructure in the museum in its place, I think I'll find more time to be equally involved with my own creative pursuits as I am presently, involved.
So a great artist who created a great institution. Rajeev Lochan, thank you very much. This has been a great.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you.
Lovely. It's always lovely talking to you. Thanks.